What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's going on with the overall market, what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers, what you should be watching for in the economic calendar, and how the news and earnings that just came out are going to affect the markets. But before I break into these all this information, before I break down what's going on with SPY right now, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's going on with the markets. Looking at SPY right now, you guys can see that this thing got this rejection right over here off this 491.5 area. And now we're actually descending just a bit, grabbing liquidity back around here. But the question is, what is the support to be watching for? Is SPY going to hold up, and what we be watching for as time goes on? I'll be breaking down more details about the levels and something very interesting about SPY in just a couple of minutes. But I first want to remind everyone that we have a lot of data coming out for today. Basically, the housing data is set to come out. We'll be watching this very, very soon. We're still waiting for the data to come out, the house price index and etc. But don't forget, at 10 o'clock a.m., we have the JOLTS job openings report coming out. So expect some high volatility at that time. With all the JOLTS data, the jobs numbers tend to affect the Fed's policies and how the current state of the economy is looking. So watch for the job openings data at 10 a.m. and watch and see which way the market ends up moving. Then at 10:30 a.m. we have the Dallas Fed Services Index, the Dallas Fed Services Revenue Reports. We'll be watching that as well at 10:30. But the main time, the most important time is actually 10 a.m. That's when we have the JOLTS. That's the most important piece of data. So watch and see what this causes for the markets. Tomorrow is going to be the FOMC meeting, and the job numbers are going to be very important for the Fed's policy, so watch that very carefully. For a couple of pieces of news affecting the markets, the S&P 500 and Dow Jones have hit new all-time highs again, and as they're continuing to hold up, we're going to be watching to see how well they can maintain these levels and how they're affected by the jobs numbers. On top of this, do not forget that GM beat Wall Street's expectations. I'll be talking more about GM's earnings in just a few minutes, and their forecast is still looking relatively strong. So good earnings so far. This is actually looking quite positive. This is very healthy for the industry, and this is actually very good for other EVs out there. On top of that, another deal bites the dust as Amazon has terminated its plans to acquire Roomba, maker iRobots, basically. And with the company saying that on Monday, there's still no path to regulatory approval for the deal. They announced this for now, and we'll see what happens as time goes on. The company also announced that it's going to lay off 31% of its employees, or about 350 people, so watch that very carefully. Flutter, the parent company of the international sportsbook FanDuel, made its debut on the New York Stock Exchange. So this is another listing under FLUT. If you're interested in just trading it or buying it, this is like your opportunity. So watch for that as well. And that's pretty much it for now. The Eurozone narrowly avoided a recession in the fourth quarter of 2024, according to the flash figures from the European Union's Statistics Agency. That is very important since they avoided it. That's pretty decent news, but we'll have to see what happens going forward because these high interest rates are still affecting them. That's pretty much it for now for the main pieces of news affecting the markets. Let's just talk about earnings. So this morning we had Pfizer, GM, and UPS, and just a few others. Then later on, we have Microsoft, AMD, and Alphabet announcing earnings after market close. On top of this, when you look at the numbers, GM beat on EPS and revenue, Pfizer beat on EPS. Also, actually, they missed on EPS, excuse me, but they did beat on revenue. And then we have JBLU, which ended up missing just a little bit on pretty much everything except revenue. And then UPS, they beat technically on revenue, but they missed on they beat on EPS and they missed on revenue basically. So for Pfizer, mixed earnings. Guidance is a little mixed, not the strongest. And for GM, they beat estimates and their forecast has been very strong with continued strong profits for 2024. So good news for GM. For now, they're showing some strong signs of good guidance, and this is actually good news for Tesla and other EVs out there. Beating on EPS, beating on revenue, that's good for GM for now. Now let's talk about the charts. How are things looking? Well, we're going to have to watch what SPY's reaction is to the JOLTS job openings at 10 a.m., 30 minutes after market open. For now, here's what's going on. So SPY is basically retracing just a bit. We're going to be watching to see, do we hold this 490 support? If we lose this, there's going to be a risk of it coming all the way back down to the breakout area, which is at 489.05 to around that range. And if we lose that, our next target is going to be all the way down here around this 488 area. So we'll be watching that very, very carefully. Now, if we try to bounce or push up, you're going to be watching this resistance right here at 490.5. Then we have 491.5 and 492.5. Right now, the market's going to be reactive to some data. So the best thing to do is just wait and see. 10 a.m. JOLTS job openings. Let's see if this causes some kind of bounce or not. But for now, we're trying to hold up. There's a very good chance that the market has more upside coming because this trend is still very strong. And I think that the market's not done quite yet. So we'll have to see if the market kind of retraces a bit, grabs liquidity, and gets a bounce after the JOLTS report. Watch that very carefully and be very patient. That's the best thing I could really tell you for now. On the QQQ, it's basically the same setup. So the QQQ is retracing just a little bit after hitting 429. We're going to be watching this breakout area. So right here, 426 is the level of supports to be watching for. We also have this imbalance over here if we lose 427. And we have 425 below that. We have this next support, which is pretty much like right about here. We'll be watching all of this very, very carefully. But in my opinion, this looks like it might retrace a little bit. It's looking a little bit weaker than SPY. Might come down just a little bit, then watch and see what the reaction is after the JOLTS job openings. Because one could argue that we're actually forming kind of like a cup and handle, and it's going to retrace a little bit and then just get a nice bounce, right? You could also interpret this as like an inverse head and shoulders. We have this left shoulder here. We come down from a right shoulder and then we just bounce. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. I'll be watching this very, very carefully. If we're bullish, you want to be eventually breaking 427.25 and 429 to higher levels. For bearish, you want to see it lose basically 425, but this could be kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like structure. So we could be watching for essentially, this left shoulder, right? This could be like the head, and there could be like a right shoulder forming like this before it continues higher. That's one possibility. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. But if anything, watch for the reaction at 10 a.m. Let's see what the jolts cause. I'll be watching for that very, very carefully. On Tesla stock, I just want to mention that Tesla is looking bullish thanks to GM's earnings. This thing is pumping, not to mention some more good news. And Tesla's trying to make a full recovery after how much it dropped. If you look at Tesla on the daily time frame, we're currently at 195, and we have this gap that goes all the way up to about 206. So if we break above 200, our next target will be that gap fill. We're still getting very close to that. So, excuse me, guys, I apologize. Tesla's coming very close to this area. We could come down a little bit to fill this gap around 192.5 and then bounce and start pushing. Or if we don't really lose support right over here at 194, we could just keep pushing from here. So either drops a little bit then pushes, or pushes from here. I think it's eventually going to make its way up to 200 and eventually 206. I think Tesla's still on an uptrend, nice accumulation. I think it's just getting started. So I favor the bulls right now. Just watch and see if it pulls back just a little bit before it continues higher or just pushes from here. Overall, I do see this thing breaking 195 and pushing towards 197 and then eventually 200. For support, make sure you watch 194. If we lose this, there's 192. And if that fails us, there's 190. Then below that, we have 187.5 and 186. In my opinion, like I said, either comes back, grabs liquidity and bounces, or just pushes from here. I think 200 plus is coming soon on Tesla. For Nvda, just like the QQQ, this thing is retracing a bit. This is what we talked about yesterday. So we're watching this breakout area, right? This 625 area, and also we're at 628. If we come down to 625, watch and see if buyers defended right there. But if it keeps dropping, we have an imbalance. And it goes all the way down to 620. If we lose 625, 620 is going to be our next target. And if we bounce off that, that's going to be very important. If we're bullish, you want to see it break 632. If we break, the higher levels are coming. Now, I just want to mention that it depends on the data. Do we come down to the breakout area and get a big bounce off the data? Or do we come and continue to sink? It's got to be one of those two. Watch and see how well we hold above 625 and 620 on Nvda. And watch and see if we get a bounce at one of those levels, maybe 625. Let's see if the jolts push this even higher. So we'll be watching for this very, very carefully. That's what I'm going to be watching for, at least for the time being. Besides that, we'll be watching to see what else happens. Now I'm going to go back to Apple before I end the video. Apple stock, in my opinion, is looking very interesting. Apple, it's still a little bit weak, but when we watch to see how well it bases at this 190 area, it's trying to shuffle around this area. If the jolts cause a bounce, we're going to be looking for a pushback to 192. If the whole market comes down, we could be looking for 189 to be retested and 188. So we'll be watching that as well. Overall, this is kind of looking weak, but it's shuffling around 190. So watch and see what the reaction is. Besides that, guys, I think that there's a good chance Apple could try to bounce a little bit and trade sideways within this range in the low 190s. But with that being said, have a great day. I want to thank you all so much for listening. Please remain calm, cool, and collected. I'll see you guys on the next one later on. Watch for volatility at 10 a.m. and please take care. Thank you and peace out.